I see a beautiful crystal standing there. You can program a rock crystal that you put in the ground, and the vibration that comes from there will positively influence us. Did you know that there are farmers who put crystals in the ground so that cows give 10% more milk? Did you know? Okay, it also happens here in Calvinist Netherlands. Hey, nice that you watch and are listen to Vibes Talk. We hope to be able to inspire you with this live show, to raise awareness, and above all, to be a positive charging station in this special time. Do you think it's great? Then support our foundation. Then we can build new media and more beautiful world together with you. And don't forget to like and share this video with all your friends and family, because we're facing censorship, and subscribe to our channel. For all information, what we do, go to our website univibes.nl/events. And I'll go to my guest today, and one man is actually a friend of the show. Welcome, Martina. Great to have you back with us. Awesome. And Briony Vanden Bussche, glad you're here. Today we're going to talk about societies for the future. So basically cities for the future. I have some drawings. Roy sent it to me. It's incredibly spectacular. People already know Roy, but I'm also very curious about your story, Briony. Maybe we can briefly explain to the viewers who you are and what you are mainly doing at the moment. I'm Briony, and together with Roy, we have had an entrepreneurial training for several years, where we help entrepreneurs to see more opportunities and to further expand their business and make it more impactful. In addition, I've always had a great passion for education, and we will talk about this in a moment. Of course, I'm also working on further developing and building the entire network around those societies for the future. I'm very interested and curious, but let's also start with your own story first, because the things you're doing right now, has it always been there? Were you already involved with consciousness as a child? And did you feel different? How was that? As a child, I was actually a very vulnerable child. I looked like an elf, still. I mean, I was more in the other world than here in the earth world. So for me, it has been quite a process to get more, I would say, grounded here and more connected with earthly life. I didn't like it that much. I always wanted to leave, and I wanted to go back to the magic. I was looking for the magic. I'm born in New Caledonia, so a tropical island close to New Zealand, quite far away. But I also could experience there the magic of nature, so had a strong connection with that, and has always been longing for and searching for that magic in nature. Because then I came to Europe and had a normal school career in secondary school, and then in university. And after university, I was really in my head. Programmed. Yes, I was a good brainwash of the system. I did feel that it was not right. As a child, I had contact with people who supported me, coached me with the energetic work, but I still was not well connected with my body because I had to focus so hard on my head. How did your parents deal with also having a daughter who was a bit of another world? Yes, they said that I was a child when they were in Africa. They visited once a church, and then I told them, I hear children singing. And they got very scared. They were like, come on, let's leave now, because there's no one there. It was an abandoned church, so you can't hear anyone. But I heard children singing. But how did your parents deal with that? Were they open? Yes, my parents were partially open, but were also a bit afraid because it was not really accepted in their childhood. So there are fears and programming that it's not safe and it's weird. Sometimes I had trouble sleeping because, I could feel energies that are not always fun. No, it was an intense period. And then you enter the school system anyway. Yeah, I studied economics, all in the system. And how did it come about that you wanted to bring change? So you also entered education because you felt like, I want to do something different? How did that go? Yes, in the beginning I had studied economics, so I thought I will become a manager because that is what you learn in school. Everyone becomes a manager after having studied economics. So I went to apply a number of times where I thought, I think I'll leave immediately. We don't even have to do this interview because it won't work. Because you still felt, I actually started taking a lot of courses to reconnect with myself, and I had the feeling otherwise I might die. That's what I felt. And I'm dying a little inside. How can I bring life back into myself? So then I started to follow a lot of emotional bodywork and spiritual trainings, a lot of things that filled me with, from the inside out again, where I met myself. Do you also see that as a universal thing, that we as a society are very much disconnected, that we're in our head and away from connection? Is that a bit your transition that you've been through? Yes, I think a lot of people recognize this. And of course, the point with those societies for the future is that we don't have to go through that entire trajectory of an entire life course to become alienated and then reconnect. So, when did you go into teaching at some point? How did it go? Yes, and I chose to teach first economics and bookkeeping. I found all those things quite boring. I actually thought everything I had to teach was boring, so I thought this won't be it. Then I started developing workshops for children, and then I also coached starting entrepreneurs. And that's where I noticed that those entrepreneurs are also just in the box. They're also alienated and they're disconnected from their creativity, their fantasy, their imagination, their intuition, their social emotional skills. We just don't get that at a school, so then I felt like I really have to start with kids. Then I also, as a singer-songwriter, developed songs for children all around elves and the elements of nature, because I couldn't find it. I was looking for those for my workshops. They weren't there. So I thought I'd make it myself, and then actually turned into a theater performance. I performed a lot in schools, and then I started organizing events. That has become a fairy festival, and at a certain point it has become very big. And then I also organized fairs around educational innovation. At that moment, a whole group of people came together and said, we're going to start a new school. And I say, start a new school. I also need to start a new school. At the end of the ride, I was pulling the whole cart. Of course, because of my background in economics and entrepreneurship, before you know it, you're also setting up a project or a business. Then I thought, I'm going to change the world. This is it. I'm going to be earth-shattering, changing. Roy knows that feeling. And then, of course, you end up in a system again because it was an official school. Then you have all those final terms from the government. Then you have 101 regulations that you must comply with. Then you have the parents who are sometimes battling and fighting at your doorstep. Then you have children who come to school and may not have food or other problems, refugees. Then you have so many things in one that suddenly come. And I was going to change the world. Why did you actually want to set up your own school? Where does that come from? Because I feel that the roots of our society, of our imagination, are in schools, or are given in schools to a very large extent. And if we create schools that are actually more like prisons, then we create people who have imagination that are also in a box in a prison, so to speak. So if we want to do it differently, if we want to connect children with all possibilities, then yes, we just need new schools. How do you view the current school system? What do you think? Do you still have 3 hours? No, that will be a very busy broadcast. But I find it very interesting anyway, because of course I'm in the middle of it myself. I have a 3.5-year-old son. I think you can also see that the system is in a kind of transition, but it also is quite stuck. I also hear many initiatives that are launching new schools. Now it's hard to get through. It's hard being a private school. It is not affordable for many people. So let me start first. How do you view the current school system, and what do you think could be done differently? Do you want to start? I want to. Yes, I think the basis is imagination. So the basis where we train the basic human skills which we need to be happy in life. Then I talk about social emotional skills, intuition, being connected to your soul qualities, why you were born here on this planet. In addition, what you also see in entrepreneurs, that they often lack the entrepreneurial strength and also the decisiveness to realize your dreams, to go for it. If you fall, to get up again, and also to be able to look at yourself from, okay, everything is a mirror, so how does the world mirrors me, and which piece can I tackle in myself to take the next step in my life? And you can use a lot of techniques for that, so that's actually a very broad thing. Until, yes, you basically have to redesign everything from health to education to lifestyle.
Je hebt eigenlijk alles opnieuw te designen, van gezondheid, van educatie, van lifestyle, van...
And this is completely not happening at school now. Elements. I think there are a lot of initiatives. I think that many teachers are also doing their best to introduce innovation. I think there is also a desire from teachers and from boards to introduce innovation. But I also experience what it is like when you are stuck in a system and it is a rat race. You're in such a rat race that whatever you bring in as innovation is good and are gems of innovation. But on the other hand, you are actually as if you have a bottomless pit and you are throwing water droplets into it and they are flowing away. The system is already in its foundation compromised, in the sense that we created the whole school system to make good, docile citizens. And that's basically it. That was the intention of the school system.
En dat is in de basis, dat was de intentie, dat is in de intentie van het schoolsysteem gezien.
So we have actually created an organization that has an intention, and the intention is to create compliant citizens. And therefore you actually need a whole new system that has been created with a different intention. And with which intention we may create it. Then I want to draw this card. Look. On the one hand, you have education itself. Almost everyone agrees that it is no longer fit in this day and age. We work with an old system. I was a doctor, so I'm going one step further. It's because how the brain functions. At school, we actually slow down our potential because of the way we transfer information all at once. There are two things wrong. Number one, we believe we should pump information in, while educare stands for getting it out. So in fact, at a school, we have to extract talents that are already in the child. And we also happen to be able to do all of that nonsense like geography, mathematics, history, and others in our sleep. I had learning difficulties at school, and so in primary school I lived in my own bubble and had what we called invisible friends who knew everything. So I had great grades in primary school. Then I got to high school and my invisible friends were gone. And I didn't remember anything. I was the dumbest in class at that time. But one of those friends gave another tip, and we call it sleep learning. I can learn everything I need to know in my sleep, and so I did. How does that work then? Well, basically, when I was 11 years old, I didn't know very much then, but I realized that you have to record everything you need to remember on audio. At that time, we still had those reels. They're very big things, and you could record 10 to 12 hours on it. That's before my time, so I recorded everything, and during the night I put on the headphones and then sleep. I knew everything. I went from the dumbest in class to graduated cum laude, not only for high school, but also for my medical degree. But how does it work then? Is it scientific? Is that because this then enters your subconscious mind? How does something like that work? Yes, we should talk about the brains for a moment. Look, the first thing we do in school is we start focusing on the left brain. We're shutting down a lot. And what Briony also tells, the right brain is wireless connected to everything, including the quantum field. The whole magical part is the side of the right brain. So we throw that out. Okay, so wait a minute. Still good to hook up. In fact, you tell in our entire school system that very magical, that whole quantum piece that is actually immediately taken out. And the left brain that slows down everything because it wants to understand everything. The speed of the left brain is 1/10 or much less than the right brain. Secondly, when we force a child to pay attention, then you are actually completely deharmonizing the brain. So in fact, the child needs to learn much more through play, much more what we call from a relaxed brain state of alpha. So basically, if the child can just play, go into a trance, it absorbs 10 times more than if you tell a child to pay attention. So the moment you say pay attention, you block everything. That is why sleep learning is where you are already relaxed and where you absorb everything like a sponge, you see? All the facts we can do in our sleep and the things that you're really going to develop, that ambidextrous, left, right, body movement, emotions, communicating with each other, the emotional intelligence, social intelligence. If you want to learn another language, you have to build a whole culture around it. You have to dance, jump, not just a lesson of a few hours. That's why we speak languages so badly, because it isn't developed naturally. So there are so many more things that we could do from the quantum side. Also look at the right-left brain integration, which has been completely disassembled in our school system. If you have a newborn child, you have the potential of a genius. Just think of the most expensive computer on earth that you buy, and then you only use it to send emails. That's what we do with the children, and that's where my piece is, because I had learning disabilities myself. I'm already developing sleep learning programs with Briony, where kids can already learn how to actually get better memory, more confidence, deal with emotions, more social interactions while asleep. We can already program all those things during sleep. Another important piece, of course, is that if you have a lion, we are born lions and you are raised by sheep, yes, then you become a sheep. What we want to get to is the potential there is that basically the educator has to start discovering what's in the child, not what we have to put in the child. That's easy. I never really understood that at school either, that you don't look at someone's talents, not at the potential, but that you should indeed be completely schooled on numbers and that it's your path, and then you go to school. One size applies to everything, while we have to acknowledge that everyone is different. Everyone has a different way of learning. So my daughter prefers to learn lying down, and you will force her on a chair. That's not working well. funny because I was also a free child, of course, and I wanted to be outside in nature. And then I suddenly had to go to secondary school, high school, from such a primary school to a high school, and then suddenly sit 2 by 2 and all day just listen, and then come home as a child of 12 and then do homework for 3 more hours. What a nonsense. Fortunately, I had a mother who saw that very quickly. This does not make you happy. That's also where Briony and I work on quantum thinking. How can you manifest from your attunement to the quantum field in which we guide entrepreneurs? So that's where we found each other. Well, she is more of the school, and I had my own experience in school as a child with ADHD learning difficulties, where we found each other. And of course, I got my thing more into holistic medicine as a doctor, and this is how it came about. If you want to raise the children in the right way, you also want to do that in a kind of community where the child is central. And that is how the idea for societies for the future was born. That's how the ball starts rolling. And then other people join in. And then you also need to think, where are we going to start? Well, then I met somebody you also know, Stacey Seedorf, and he had land in Suriname. And then I said, come on guys, we're going to make something beautiful out of it. So one thing led to another. Then I met an architect who is not only an architect, but also understands and masters Feng Shui and geomancy. So he feels, he knows, he channels. You have to look at the new world in a completely different way. You cannot create something new from an old box of thinking. So you always have to go back to square one. And then look at all the systems again. Yes, that was the idea, because I've been a director for 5 years of a primary school and also a private high school that is still running in Belgium. But in any case, what I noticed was that I also ran into financial problems. And I think that a lot of people listening now know that too. If they work in a school or if they are principals of a school, you have so many constraints in finances. Our finances were bitter enough to just run, not even to pay the electricity bill in full. And then you actually have to come up with projects all the time to keep paying all the bills. So you are actually running a whole business. Meanwhile, you still have to be school at the same time. And I thought, this is not feasible. I would like to set up a school someday again, but I do want it to be completely economically supported and supported by the entire community. And from there, as Roos said, we start thinking about, yes, what does such a business plan look like? Suddenly it became a whole village, because you started thinking, yes, you need housing, but you also have a school, so you need people, parents who live around it, and other people, so you need business activities for them. Vitality clinic, and yes, you want your own food. So before you know it, you have a whole village that has to be developed. And then it became a whole society that had to be developed. And then it was like, yes, I now have a background in education and entrepreneurship, but I have never built a house in my life. I did renovate some, but that's about it. So yes, that's why I had to listen to, for example, architects who could inform me, and that's how we were connected to experts on water purification, agriculture, because everything is involved from A till Z. Those experts were gradually brought on my path or brought on our path to actually create the concept, the model. And that is still going on. Every time someone new comes along and then they say, I developed this new method and you could do this and that. And yes, it's in full expansion. And I don't think this will be different in the next few years. Do you also feel that it is in movement, that people want to move forward towards a new way of living? Absolutely sure. The crazy thing is, I would say, the field is pregnant and it's up in the air. On the one hand, we have parents like you who know, I don't want the old system anymore and it's getting more and more intense. Of course, you also have the youth who don't want to go to school either, who doesn't want anything. So that is also hanging in the air. And there are also a lot of problems with young people who have really huge complaints and are stuck. The innovation has to come, but the innovation gets stuck in rules. So that's why one of the things that I first thought was, I just have to go to Africa. They are happy with new schools. And now we end up in Suriname. It's half Africa. So it is very complex, especially in Western society, to come up with something new. Something totally disruptive. I find it very interesting, Roy, but we also have that with medicine, don't we? So the new is being held back, so that's the problem we have. So that's why we're already partly online, because at some point, thanks to the lockdowns, there are more people who are open to online learning. But at the same time, online is more of the same, so we have to come up with new ways. That's a phase where we're in now. And of course, there is also the financial part. Now we are looking for solutions for that. Yes, the financial part is also a very important one, because actually was my first motivation before I thought of an entire society. I was first considering I must be able to create finance in a different way than now. I absolutely do not want to receive a loan and pay it off for life to set up a new school. So that was not an option. So I told myself I want to be able to turn on a flywheel that always creates new finances to set up such societies. And then I was introduced to networks where project funds are actually created by using money in certain ways without actually putting anyone at risk. So you can create new projects. And that is something that many organizations use, but it's not something that is publicly promoted or that many people know. So I thought, interesting, I should know all about that. So I started to look into it, and through my boyfriend, I got a lot of contacts in the financial world.
Zo heb ik me in gaan verdiepen en via mijn vriend ben ik in heel veel, hij zat al in die netwerk, in heel veel contacten gekregen in die financiële wereld.
And then they started asking me to submit my business plans, and then yes, I thought, we don't have a business plan. So then we had to start working on business plans, and we noticed that a school is not profitable in itself, so a lot of modules had to be developed, and that is how the plan was actually created for a village that is still in development.
Voor een dorp dat nog altijd
it doesn't stand still.
Het staat niet stil, maar het is wel een
But are there any parties that really feel like, hey, yes, we also want to help you with this? You mean the funds? With the funds, the funding mechanism doesn't necessarily need someone to invest their own funds in that project. Those funds can create other funds for their own project and for our project as well. So it is a win-win-win for all parties.
Andere fondsen creëren voor zijn eigen project en voor ons project ook. Dus het is eigenlijk een win-win-win voor alle.
I'll go with you next time, Briony. You do need some basic capital to start it up.
Je hebt wel een basiskapitaal nodig om het op te starten.
Then I still need a few years.
Maar toch ook over de, want ik vind het waanzinnig. Ik heb ook de tekeningen gezien, maar ook
I really think it's insane. I also saw the drawings, but indeed, what you still see is that we all want a new school, but how can you go through that? How can we really create that, put that down, manifest it? Or is it already happening?
Dat we echt gaan creëren, dat neerzetten. Of gaat dat, Roy, of is het al
gaande? It is definitely going on. We are already international, so we talk with different parties who are already very far with different programs for children.
Die al heel ver zijn met verschillende programma's voor kinderen. Tot nu toe is het heel erg gericht naar online. Maar ik heb ook net een praktijk.
I've also met a practice that calls Heel Ways, and they are also working on a new school. And I'm going to work with them too, because I'm now also developing sleep learning for children, because that is my thing. And I'm 100% sure, not only with my own experience, but also with my daughter and with other children, because I also had an audio program called Kies with a Z. And then you see how children really blossom just when you give them the right words in the right way. My daughter, who had problems learning German, I made an audio and she listened to it in her sleep and it opened all the way. So we want to integrate all those ideas. But it's normal. I know that from medicine, if you don't have resistance, then you're not doing anything new or good. That is step number 1, because the innovation will always have to give resistance, because the old is in the comfort zone. We all see it. We all want it. But the comfort zone, to get people out of that, that's something completely different. So you have another layer. Well, we are looking for people who are also looking, but also run into those walls of resistance. And when you find there the connection, say like-minded people, then a movement arises, and then it flows. And that is why we are very happy to be here, because we are looking for those people, because in the end, it is all co-creation. Our slogan is, together we create. Exactly my point. And our slogan is co-creating the future. Yes, I totally feel that. We have to come together with those kind of like-minded people. That's just it. So when you're involved with such a society, you don't just do that alone. It's not like, oh, I got my product or service and I'm going to conquer the world. No, you just can't put it together without a lot of help and co-creation. And it is even co-creation on an energetic level, in the sense that an entire field has to be on and awake to set up such a new society. So that's why it's so important that that movement gets going, so that a lot of people are consciously involved in it. And the more people are involved in it, also with their imagination, taking the first steps, the faster you will see it being realized. Then maybe some people are the ones who execute it at a certain time, but at the moment there are teams in more than 25 countries working on this concept. So we just visited Suriname, and Roy will tell you more about the Amazon and the Vitality Clinic and about his strong connection with it. In addition, there are actually groups all over the world who really want to take the next step, who are waiting for funding for the entire concept, but who are already having very innovations in many areas. So if you then ask about what you asked Roy about resistance, we are simply in a world where the old is crumbling down and the new is growing and creating and emerging. We choose to stand in that wave of creation, of creating the new.
Groeien is en aan het creëren is. En wij zijn we kiezen heel erg om in die wave te gaan staan van creatie, van het nieuwe creëren.
How will that look like? We don't have a 100% clear idea about that. We have ideas that we bring together, that imagination, we co-create the dream. Yes, great. And this is also the great thing, that you meet the right people at the right time. From quantum thinking, we often say, you don't have to know the how. You have to know where you want to go. If you know the goal, the dream, you can feel it and connect with it, you will see that the right people will automatically cross your path. And that is also the way how you create synchronicities through, possibilities. Yes, exactly. So at a certain point, Briony says, Aniel, do you know Aniel? And yes, of course I knew Aniel. And then I remember, I met him then, and it turns out to be the architect we will also call in later. And then you see that all is really exactly right. Exactly the man who fits into this concept is not just any architect. And then the right one emerges through those coincidences. I'm sure that because of this conversation, people are listening to this. New people will come along who are exactly the right ones again. I know that it is very much alive in people, of course. We also hear a lot of that people also want to think about communities. So this could also be done in the Netherlands? Yes, you could do that anywhere, depending on the context. In Suriname, you have a lot of land. You can say, we take a very large piece of land. In the Netherlands, I don't know where you will find that very large piece of land to say we are building something completely new. But you can certainly integrate many aspects. Every country will integrate it differently in its own way, and every context is different. So the architecture will also look different. The climate is different. So yes, there is a solution for everything. But we do know very well that the new world wants to be born, that is pushing. What kind of a nicer world would you get, indeed, if you were to work for such a society with new healthcare? We will dive into that further in the future. Also for children, just to make that connection. For children, I see that you're already starting to shine. Your eyes are sparkling. Yes, especially for young children. For me, young children, you learn through the fairy tale worlds. And through the fairy tale world and imagination, you take them on a journey, a fantasy journey. They are also completely multidimensionally connected, so that consciousness is still completely there. You don't have to change that much either. All that matters is that you put them in an environment that continues to nurture that imagination. And yes, anything you ever desire in your life can be integrated in a new way of schooling. It's just laying the foundation and then building on it. It is of course true that sometimes we think that if you have a society that all our problems will be solved. But if you are very honest in your life, then you always have something going on. Then you always struggle with something to solve for the next period, the next step. So I don't think that those new societies will be like, oh, there won't be any argue anymore or quarrels. Then we will have no more conflicts. Recently I heard the following: there will always be conflicts and quarrels, but you may treat each other in a different way during those quarrels. Yeah, the most important thing is that the intention is there to come out together. We cannot grow without challenge, but it is very different to grow when you also have some emotional intelligence. When you have social intelligence, spiritual intelligence, and the willingness. Just like in a relationship, the willingness must be there to solve it together with respect for each other. If that is the basis, yes, then you know that everything will be fine. Then you can relax. But when those egos are against each other and one has to be right, you will never find a solution. I'll tell it at home. So you're so busy with these projects right now. I think it's fantastic to hear that so many countries are already involved in this. At least you already know you're trying to realize it. You have also recently been to Suriname. How was that? And maybe we'll get to Stacey and Aniel later. Can we go back? It was magical. Yeah, and she wants to go right back. My story of Suriname goes back a little longer in the sense that I'm from the Antilles myself. I think about 30 years ago I was at a party in The Hague when someone arrived, Olaf Smit, who says, yes, I just came back from Suriname and made a documentary about shamans. Just before I came back here, they described someone, and I think that is you. And they said that you should come to Suriname, because we want to teach you about the herbs of Suriname, because with them you can cure all Western diseases. Yes, and I knew then I was still young, arrogant, and just blossoming. And you know, the middle of my career, and they said something to me, tell him he knows nothing about medicine. And that triggered you. Yes, that triggered me. So I didn't go. Olaf Smit went in my place, and he became a shaman there.
Dus in mijn plaats is toen een Olaf Smit gegaan en die is shamaan geworden.
So a few years ago, just before the COVID, in my workshop, there appeared a shaman from Suriname. She has the name Auntie Roma. She's never been to a workshop and she's sitting there in the front beaming at me. I went to her and I say, why are you here? and she says, the Amazon is calling you. And so I went to Suriname finally, and she did rituals with me there. I was literally taken over by the jungle. I was led to a plant, and there was a voice which said, this is a cure for diabetes.
En ik ben geleid naar de plant en er zei een stem van dit is de genezing.
So I'm still experimenting with that, and then came COVID, and I stopped doing what I had to do. But anyway, that was my first connection to the Amazon as a consciousness. And so what the Amazon actually passed on to me sounds maybe floaty, but I'm not floaty at all. This is really an experience without plant medicines or others. I was told we have much to offer to the world, and the name the Amazon now bears from me is Big Green Pharma. Everything we need in terms of medicine is already there. Then we also came across plant medicines. All that stuff is waiting to be brought to the world in a right way.
Wacht om op een juiste manier naar de weg gebracht wordt. Dus en daardoor krijgen we niet alleen
As a result, we get that the Amazon is not only the lungs of the earth, but is actually the herb garden for the world. I think that's very special, and I want to pick up on that very briefly, is that you can already see that certain plant medicines are already being used in regular care. So it's really under development, also at pieces, and what happened is that all the pharmaceutical industry are going to the Amazon. But they don't really get the real medicine there because the shamans know they are not there they're only there for exploitation and just for taking and not the trade-off.
Dat zij er alleen uit zijn voor exploitatie en het nemen en niet de wisselwerking. Nee.
But if I go there, everybody wants to share information. We also work together with the Amazon conservation team. So we also tackle that part of dealing with the Amazon in a sustainable way. Also the existing tribes there, we are told that 23 tribes there has never come into contact with humans and are also protected. So that has to be approached in a completely different way. And in the Amazon, I basically want to explore my ideas, other ideas from experts on the best ways to use those herbs for the most complex diseases. So that's part of that part that's going on. And another dream of me is precisely to have students from the Amazon there who have almost no chance for the future, almost because the schools in the Amazon are really not very of high quality. You have often one room where everything happens. Imagine that they can also bring the new form of learning to such an area. Those are all things that, come together. And then I meet someone with whom I now really are a soul brother, Stacey, and he says, boys, I have land. Shall we catch up with him?
Yeah.
Good to have you here, Stacey. Maybe also very briefly, we will also do a different show with you later. It will come next week. Then we will go also more in depth. But would you like to briefly explain how your connection is, what your link is, and what is now also emerging in Suriname? Could you perhaps tell us how you became soul brothers? Yes, I've known Roy for a long time. I've known Roy for a very long time from what he has done in his life. So I always thought that he was great. And at one point I inherited land from my father in Suriname, 54 acres, and I had no idea what to do with it. I've land, but no idea. I had been looking for a long time. Because my father said, Stacey, if you do something with it, do something you can be proud of. Do something with it that will make people happy. He said, I know you're a Dutchman, because my father is really a rootsman from the forest. He says, I know you're Dutch, but try to think differently. Yes, that's how things go. So what then, what am I supposed to do with that? 54 hectares of land, that's such a piece of land. And so I had no idea. So I have always been in contact with my dad, always on a more energetic level. What do you want me to do? Is this what you want then? Because a lot of offers come, a lot of people who want to buy the land, who want that wood on the land. No, he just didn't give me the answer. Not that green light that I was looking for. And you're going to ask questions anyway. You let people know that you have something and that you want something. And then that starts creating something. At some point, the question will get somewhere. And then through the grapevine, I heard from a friend of mine, Kenneth, who I knew from martial arts back in the days. I told him that I have land in Suriname, but I have no idea what to do with it. And a day later, coincidentally, he spoke to Roy Martina, and Roy Martina said, I have an idea, but I have no land. And Kenneth said, Stacey, you will never believe I have such a wonderful someone for you. Do you know Roy Martina? I said, yes, I know him. We just never met. But apparently now is the time that we met a day later, and it actually clicked right away. As the way we greet each other, it was like it had been forever. Sometimes you have those connections. That's how we actually met, and then it actually turns out that the plans he has then resonate so much with the questions I had. And because I was also thinking, okay, where is the world going? What do I want now? I have 4 boys because at least the 4th is coming, but I have 2 older sons and I have a 2-year-old boy, Milan, who is growing up now. So where are we going with this world? What do I actually want with that? And do I want to have him into the school system, for example, as the one I've had, which I'm extremely critical of in recent years. But where do you go with the questions until that new idea emerges, and then it all comes together? And then you find each other, and then you discover that there are many answers to all the questions that you have had for a long time, if you are clear in the question. I got confirmation afterwards, so it was only a matter of time before we went there. And the people he worked with also came our way. Yes, they all gave me the feeling and the conviction that I had to do with that land, that this was the good idea. And I felt, let's go for it.
Let's go. Wow.
And how are things now? Where are you in the process? We will, of course, talk about the architect in a moment. I've seen the drawings. Where are you now in the process? Is there already green light? Are there already people who want to live there, who want to go there? The funny thing is that we are used to thinking in straight lines, thinking linear. So we think land, this, that. But in the meantime, a whole field has emerged. Because first of all, you're going to look now at what we call the déjà vu, the overlaps. What are the things in the past? Well, it turns out we both from the combat world, martial arts, we have both our black belts, and we have done a lot of things in it. Both champions, and so you have a second touching point. A third point came out that this gentleman, just like me, has also been involved in quantum thinking, and he also trains coaches and trainers, and coaches people, and then you see the overlap. Actually arises a click not only on the level on the land, but also on another level. We can say, yes, listen, just like brothers. We have also sat together and we will do more things together. So a larger process has emerged. That all has to do with innovation. We want to teach people how they can approach life more effortlessly by using the quantum laws. That's one side of the story that's happening. And then you see other people connecting. And they are attracted more by the energy than just the idea. So we now have been to Suriname, and we have done very nice things there with Briony locally. Briony, who has gotten other contacts there. So processes are now evolving. Well, in a moment we will also have the architect, who is now also developing the plans, because he must also see the land. He must also know how that feels. It's not just land. Normally you just have a piece of land and you build a building. That's not what we do. We now have someone who goes to the land, who will feel which tree should remain, which should not. So the whole process is moving now. So that's the phase where we're in now, and that's with Briony, of course. So the larger process. In fact, Suriname is only a smaller part of a large whole.
Is nu in beweging. Dus dat is nu de fase waar we zitten. En dan met Briony zijn we nog een ander stuk, is het grotere proces.
Ja.
Dus in feite is Suriname maar een klein onderdeeltje.
But the beauty is there is land. And for me it was also very special. On the one hand, we go to the land because I had never seen it before. The land is still virgin, all forests. So there's nothing built there yet. And we also went through a process there to bless under guidance of Auntie Roma, where I already talked about her just some minutes ago, to the land. And we went there to ask permission and have a blessing. It was beautiful to see what happened next. So it's already moving. So that's one side of what is happening. Now there is also local movement. We are in contact, for example, the team that is working on the Amazon conservation team. And there are other interests. So it's phase 2 now. What is the current state of affairs? How is it now? You will hear from the architect. Of course, you have the rules, the things that have to happen. The expectation is that we can go back next year. And if we have the financing in place, then we can also move to the phase of real construction. You have to imagine that it is a fantastic process, actually. So the approach that we have with such a micro-society is on a level where you find each other in energy and in resonance. You find exactly the people you need for this, and things happen when they need to happen. The moment you trust in the process, and that requires a completely different way of thinking. For example, the question you ask already indicates a bit how you would normally think. Okay, but what are we going to do? What are we going to do when? How far are we now? How far are we then? And this is a conventional way of thinking. But the moment you trust the process, you actually send out your intent, and then you are amazed at what comes your way. The synchronicities, so you name it all, and everything turns out to be exactly as it should be. And not everything and everyone you can immediately give a role, but if you trust the process, you know that it's there for a reason. And maybe you don't know it now, but you know it didn't come for nothing, so you should cultivate that process by actually letting it go. Beautiful and real. It's a great way, and you see it in the moment you're open to it. And you see it happen. You stimulate each other, you motivate each other. The old way of thinking doesn't work. Certainly not with this shift which is going on right now. Even with school and at least medicine, it's not straight, it's a process, and that's why I'm so happy that we understand the process of quantum. That is necessary because we're entering the quantum era, and that is not one-dimensional, that is multi-dimensional, where everything comes from consciousness, from energy, and then a whole new way of working, living, educating together is created. We don't worry about the financial. We know it will be okay because it will come at the right time. The point is also that we are now opening up to that world that has always been there. We're only opening up more and more to that. And because we are opening up to it, then you open that floodgate and then you get those tools. You know, because actually the field is waiting for us to open, because it's all already there. Everything we need is already there. Only we're not there yet. That's why such a micro-society is important, because it opens all kinds of doors. The potential we have in nature and people, yes, it will bloom. Of course, that's the time for that. You need people and initiatives that can cultivate and stimulate that. Yes, and then it is bizarre what will happen, and you can even see that with Aniel the architect. You can't reach it. It didn't even know people like that existed. And that's what you get when you open up. He was always there, you see. But then, in one go, such a person arises and emerges in your reality. And he shows himself and what is needed there. Shall we bring him in? Yes.
Fantastische vent. Ja, zullen we erbij
Zeker.
Switch.
Welcome in the show, Aniel. I heard your name a few times during the conversations, how that all went. It's a very special process that you are all experiencing. How do you experience that? Recognition. And why did it take so long? Yes, is that really what you felt? Look, Tim, you've been working on what your karmic mission is for a while now. As an architect, I first thought, I'm going to be the best architect in the world, until you found out that what you've learned in Delft is really good. We have learned to design buildings that cannot collapse. But they are created so functionally and so rationally. That is how we are trained in Delft, with no connection to nature at all. As humans, we are part of nature. But everything we create is unnatural. Wow. I really miss that connection with nature. After my studies, I went to Suriname, big ego. I would become the best architect in the world for a while, but Suriname taught me something else. Connection with the Amazon, connection with the power of nature, connection with the field, that which we cannot see, but which controls everything. That was magic. How was that process for you to come up with such an ego?
Hoe was dat proces? Voor jou om met zo'n ego te komen?
Ja, dat val je met je...
Yeah, you get the first few assignments and then you think, well, go, great. I'm going to put this, construct this for my client, and then you'll come and you watch after a year what happens. And then you see it completely differently. I designed the terrace there, and the living room is there, but they sit there. They don't sit here. And that's how I designed it. Wait a minute. The energy flow, the vital air of nature does not come from there, it comes from there. That's why people are there. It's much more pleasant there, and the sun determines everything. It does come up there, and it's very fierce, and then it goes down there. So people start looking for shelter. That's how it works. So then you come back to the Netherlands, and you get back into the system, and you're back in that matrix, especially making career and even bigger car, bigger house, and traveling far, because then you've made it. And then you're also regarded as seen as a fool for the environment, and you really want to be considered fool by the world around you. Recognizable? And then my daughter joins her family, and I look into her eyes, a super angel, super spiritual, and she doesn't tell me with words, but with her whole energy, the mirror. Precisely what you do is not in connection with nature at all, in connection with you. And she's my greatest teacher. And when Sharani, my daughter, came to us, yes, then something happened energetically. A year later, I came across a Feng Shui grandmaster who was giving a course in Amsterdam. I think, let's have a look. And I'm going to follow his training and see how it feels for me. And he tells you how you can connect with that which arranges everything in nature. Yes, I went to him, and at the end of the course I said, what can I do to become your best consultant? Still, I had a big ego. He says nothing. Toronto Consulting won. I didn't think. I booked immediately, and a week before departure I thought, I have to tell this to my wife. And I said, Han, I'm going to Toronto next week. But Dr. Jess Lim, she doesn't even look up. She just says, well, then you have to do that. Wow. I didn't realize then that she was a much higher spirit than I was. And then my journey began. Yes, that's great, because if you hear it that way, really our conventional way of thinking, then you're just an architect. This is what you do and this is how you build your career. We are actually being systematically programmed. Then our focus is taken away from the greatest intelligence that is around us, and that is simply free. Of course, because it's free, it's of no use to them in a certain way. That's why it's nice that someone like Aniel feels somewhere inside that something is missing. He's drawn to the Amazon in Suriname, and then he gets the lessons, and then he opens up and slowly he cultivates that knowledge, that intelligence that he has within himself. He's open to the energy and intelligence of his children, and he takes it further. I think transitions like that are insane. And then, of course, at a certain moment, he moves to a certain frequency where he then meets the people who are, of course, also looking. Because that is also the attunement to the quantum field, because you start thinking on a different frequency. Then those people who are also involved in that will come on your path. Of course, you meet things, people, experiences that are on that frequency. You resonate with that. And that is what's so beautiful when we met, because I actually met Aniel on the same day as Roy, because he was with Roy, and then you also resonate. Because there are a lot of people out there in that area where we were, you see. You resonate on an energetic level before you have even spoken to each other. And then you feel that you have been on a mission for a long time, even before you met. It was all recognition. And then you can talk all day and night. I always say you know each other from many past lives. Yes, and in previous life you have seen and worked together before, and it was a good click, and this is why you can also find each other again in this life. But so, one other thing, if you have woken up and you connect to what is there, then you would like to convince everyone of that. This is what I can do, and this is what is possible. But the other side doesn't hear you yet. But you can not yet hear it, because it resonates at that level anyway. I've often experienced that I was like Don Quixote, telling people that we have to make healthy buildings and vital buildings in harmony with nature. And we have to look there, and then people look at me with a glossy look. This is great fun, but we're just going to go back to business, and we're going to do it in a normal way. They feel it, but they don't dare to say it like that. It's very much going on right now, of course. How do you deal with that? I have learned to speak the language that arrives at the other, because then you get movement. If you, with your enthusiasm and what you want to create, if you want to get that done by pushing it, that will not work. Because everybody is in a certain matrix stuck. Otherwise, they feel it, but they are very afraid to talk about it. Afraid to be laughed at, afraid not to be taken seriously, but above all, afraid that the environment will not accept them. As a trainer coach, we say we pick someone up where they are, and then you take them with you. Look, we have to stay awake because you function in a certain society that thinks in a certain way. So you have to speak the language that the other can understand. Well, the other side is return on investment. We have to be able to make a profit quickly, and above all, we have to fill our own pockets, or that of our group and that of the financiers. But if it is in the interest of the bigger picture and it can't benefit from that, then it won't work. So you have to, with everything that happens, also with like-minded people who run into each other, Roy, Briony, you, Stacey, and a whole field out there, also all the people watching, you have to understand the case. So you have to speak the language that the existing society accepts and that also gets you moving. I did indeed put it in that way. What we are trying to do here with Univibes is also a bit of my own transition. In the beginning, I was also very fighting and in resistance. I'm not getting along, in my opinion. The only thing we can do now, and maybe you see that is different, is to inspire. So things are indeed going on. And really show that. Do you also see that? Or do you also see that we can add something? We have one big advantage. COVID has taught us something very important. The greatest wealth of ours is not our money. It is not your expensive car parked outside. Your greatest wealth is your health. And if you can all work together to create a healthy society and bring out the potential that is within, so that everybody can benefit, then we are doing something fundamentally right. So my story was like, what's going on? Why didn't people want to hear my story? So COVID helped me a lot. And of course, I got assignments like a Feng Shui architect. But Feng Shui is also a strange word in the Netherlands and in the Western world. So I started calling it health and well-being buildings. You inspire by first of all seeing that people don't understand you otherwise, because people really want to do the right thing and the best way, the best for themselves and for their family altogether.
Dat men je anders niet begrijpt. Ja. Want mensen die willen heus wel het goede doen. En het beste voor zichzelf en voor hun gezin.
If your mission is to get people on board, to grow the movement, then you must know and understand. Don't go just against them in fighting mode, because we can't get them out of that comfort zone that way. But what's also very important is that I've learned that some people can't come along. They're stuck in their matrix and their bubble. The matrix, the blue or the red pill, he really wants to have that red pill because that they feel safe and seen.
Want dan voelen ze zich comfort. Voelen zich veilig, voelen zich vooral gekenmerkt. En ze voelen zich gezien. Sommigen willen helemaal niet gezien worden.
Nee, okay. maar het is
That's why what you do, Tim, is so great. You know, this platform, you also notice that the need for people to come together is so important. Sometimes you feel that it's not right and that many people are doubting themselves because the people around me all think in a different direction. That's why it's so nice that Briony and Roy start this as early as possible. I also look at my children very differently, for example, because that's where we're going. They can do it. They must do it. They are the children of light that we must have, who have the right energy, the right openness to do what we see as possible. With that vibe and with that intention, we have to do what we do, and that's fair. That's light, and that overcomes any kind of obstruction or challenge. We also have created a society that says only when it has been scientifically proven it is true. Only when scientifically proven it is true. You know, what I always say, when you met your wife or your partner, you felt something. There was an energetic interaction. And then you did not ask for a report or whether you would fit together. That's how the system works. So a certain energy exchange is going on in our society, and our society that you know that something is good for you. A child knows when he can burn himself on a candle, so he stays far away. He doesn't need to hear from you, you're gonna burn. They really know, so their antenna system is still very clean. Yes, and our human antenna system, which is the bridge to the architecture, is so special, so dynamic, so advanced. It is the most advanced computer in the world. The best computer in the world is not even close to us. Only those talents that are in it have never been developed. As a child, you knew exactly what is good for you and what is not good for you. A child knows exactly when someone talks to me with an open heart, they mean well with me. That was my daughter's learning process. I wanted to do business with everyone, and she taught me from the heart energy is not good. And then she will not come to you if your heart is not open. If you have a second agenda, she won't come to you. I learned that from her. So those antennas still had to be developed by me. And I gradually learned that as a Feng Shui master, as a geomant, as a communicator with the earth, and I started using it in my work. And then, of course, you also have to trust the quantum field, that things are arranged for you, only you don't see it yet. You won't recognize the masters until he's in front of you. But if it is in front of you and you do not recognize the master, nothing happens. You walk by. So I was lucky enough to meet a client who was awake and came from the hard business world, from the Zuidas, but followed their gut feeling in everything they do.
En uit de die-hard businesswereld kwamen, uit de Zuidas.
That is so important that we are going make that connection with our gut again. You notice that it is growing. You meet at some point through Univibes things, initiatives like these that are essential for this movement, because people then know you feel strengthened, you feel it collectively, you feel energy that is bubbling, yes, and then you meet Briony and Roy and our friend Kenneth, and you go to Suriname, and we arrive at the country with Auntie Roma, and we do such an initiation ritual, and the forest is completely silent. You don't hear a cricket. You don't hear a bird, and everything seems to be frozen. I understood. I saw it. It's all energies. They're thinking, what's happening here, and who are these strange birds that come here? After the blessing of the land, you can notice how the trees start to move, the birds start chirping, and you hear the crickets again. That's magical, and that is something that we must learn to recognize, because especially in the Netherlands, if something is not understood, it is immediately cut off. Bullshit. Quackery. You're immediately put in a corner. That is fear. Fear that there is something that we cannot understand and cannot control. 100%. I can really see that now. So if we can trust that what is there, the quantum field that already regulates everything, then you don't go anywhere with fear at all. You never prepare yourself for a conversation or for such an interview, but then you live from confidence because you know that you are actually omniscient. Your antenna system receives everything, and I design my buildings and the environments on that basis. You tune in on the land, the site. Every country has a certain energy field. Also here where we are in the studio, when you feel good and you smell well, you still feel that you are in the farm.
Dat voel had ik ook nog. Wij zagen niet zitten. Ik voel vooral de kou. Ja. Als je goed voelt, dan voel je
This is also a nice anecdote to what we have long forgotten, is that every piece of land has a certain energy. The ancient Romans knew that. They built all their roads along the ley lines on the earth. They are energy meridians. All of our churches are located at intersections of ley lines, so that the pastor stood on the ley lines at intersection, and that he was fed by the energy of the earth and had more power. And that we have all forgotten. We lost that. And that's why it's good that people like Aniel are there, because I would have made it up in Suriname. I have no idea what ley lines is. So there's so much talent, knowledge, and intelligence. We must then come together, and then you will find each other in that mission, and everyone has their role in it. As long as you dare to be, you will also get those tools from the fields. The best thing is what kind of end result you will create, because when people are in a building where the positive but also the less positive energy of the earth is taken into account, if I construct a building where they used to be a mass grave, I put it just 5 meters away from that place. It might have been a place of worship in the old days of the ancient Celts or the ancient Romans, or I don't know who else. Then there will be a positive energy. If you then also build a building in harmony with nature, and that's actually the classical knowledge of Feng Shui, then you just say the beautiful vital energy that flows in nature. If you could bring it in now and put it in the building, everything will flow. Then that same energy also vitalizes inside. Because how vital do you feel when you've taken a walk in the woods? When you've been to the beach? So then we come to the city, and then you're bombarded with frequencies that are not good for us at all. So your antenna system says, I have to work harder to remove that negativity. That takes energy, and then you get tired. Everyone who comes home from the city is tired, and that's why the design he has made for the country in Suriname, for the micro-society, is fantastic, so that it is all in connection with nature, and also what he tells, he tunes in that field. I would never have made it up, but I'm very happy that someone with so much knowledge is there, so you create a place where everyone can be the maximum. Why can everybody be maximum of their potential? Because you don't like all buildings either, but you build so that the primal energy in the man instinctively always feels comfortable. So you kind of take a common denominator and you build on that. You start thinking very differently. You start thinking from nature and what you can do to bring people into contact with nature. Instead of making a beautiful building and I want to live in it, and you understand the moment you're not feeling well in your energy that something is going on. Then you look elsewhere for the solution instead of calling the doctor. That is it. It's the cause. Something else is going on. You're not going to the fight symptoms. You go, that's exactly what we do. We do symptom management. My fellow architects all want to win the Pritzker Prize. Big ego. And the architect decides, but when he has carried out his assignment, the building is there, he has received the money, he doesn't care anymore. The people are there and he doesn't care. That's actually what we have to arrange at the training courses. As an architect, you should actually only be paid 5 years after you have developed if the building has functioned properly, so that people can function well in it themselves. Honestly, I looked into those drawings too. I recently had a conversation with somebody from Art Pisa about the pyramids. How do you view that? I also saw a pyramid in your drawing. How do you view this phenomenon? Pyramids have a very special shape. They can absorb a lot of energy from the earth because they are wide. Gradually it narrows so that energy merges upwards, and in the middle of that pyramid you get a kind of conservation energy. If you make with sticks a little pyramid shape and you put a little table there right in the middle of that pyramid and you put fruit there and you come back a few days later, then fruit is completely dried out. All moisture is gone. That's why those pharaohs were laid in the middle of the pyramid. This way the body remains good for longer. Each form has a specific energy quality. Now, we also can scientifically demonstrate things afterwards, but note that our science does not yet know all the instruments, has not yet developed the techniques to demonstrate this. So they're always behind everything. Our society is organized, that is, must first be scientifically proven, only then we will accept it is true. It's strange that they knew it at the time and we did not yet. Because they designed their buildings in harmony with nature and lived in harmony with nature. There was always a kind of nature person who was in touch with a higher energetic story. Spirituality has an annoying sound to us in Europe and in the Netherlands. It's linked to the church, while it is actually not. The church is a medium. Spirituality is much broader. Spiritual energy is much more in harmony with your antenna system. For it is not just that which happens in this lifetime, but the connection you have with the earth and the connection with the cosmos. We are here, but the planet is still spinning. We are in the galaxy that also rotates. And a galaxy also is more connected to a broader field. So our antenna system are tuning in that. Our children know that, and they can find that balance perfectly. But they are not developed in school to use that antenna system. Our schools are sick schools, our buildings are sick buildings, so your body has to work harder to keep you healthy. So that always costs you energy. That's why a Red Bull is so successful. That's why we have energizing shampoos. That's why you need to eat Mars bars to get energy. We don't notice it at all. We come home on the couch, we grab our bag of chips and we watch our Champions League. That's our world. But our food is no longer healthy at all. It's harvested. Then it goes through a process, and then we go through a factory. The factory makes it, and then you get ready-made food, and that has to feed you. The biggest criminal device in home is a microwave. It takes out all the vitality, so it takes out all the energy that nature has put into it. Science can't prove that yet, so it's not true.
Maar de wetenschap kan nog niet aantonen. Dus is het niet waar. Begrijp je wat er gebeurt? Dus
you're actually saying we've just completely lost that connection with nature on all levels, but also living, that's essential. Where do you sleep? Where does your body needs to regenerate? Yes, that's exactly what we don't think about at all.
Essentieel. Waar slaap jij? Waar moet jouw
then we'll think, I'll have a cup of soup, or what is that advertisement for Campina that gives you energy? In the morning you see a little boy cycling to school. That is why in micro-society everything has to be right. The energy of the land, the ground, must be correct. And if the land energy, the ground energy, does not vibrate positively, we make it vibrate positively with geomancy techniques. I see a beautiful crystal there, a mountain of crystal that you can program. You put it in the ground and the vibrations that come from there will have positive effect on us. Did you know that there are farmers who put crystals in the ground and that the cows give 10% more milk? Do you know that this also happens in Calvinistic Netherlands? We just have to dare to embrace that. If you can arrange that, so that's why the design of the micro-society is in the shape of a flower. That is one of the most vital forms that nature devises millions of years ago. You don't have to think about that anymore. You just have to look into nature. That is why the roads also have a meandering shape, because then the energy can enter in a soothing way. We wish the world is that we all live together in such a way purely because you have an intention to make the world healthier. It just turns out to be that there is also resistance. So that's why I'm glad that we're really doing this actually. And we're going back to nature. You have to see it in the way that you look at nature. Everything that nature has designed is harmonically curved, round, warm colors. Pointed shapes in nature are only used to defend or attack you. If you drive along the Zuidas and you see buildings that all have points, Ramkolla has designed a hotel in a triangle in 3 points. It wins an architecture award, but it's such a bad vibe for us humans. He can't help that either, because he's trained that way. We need to design buildings that soften our people, because when we soften your heart, it opens, and when your heart energy opens, you connect. When children can open their hearts, they connect with other children. They are still very pure. Everyone knows that children like to play with all children, whether they are black, white, red, white, Chinese. It doesn't matter. It's not until they get older that they learn that there are different people. So as a child, we are pure. Gradually, we are pushed in a certain direction. But if we can bring that purity back again, but also in our buildings, then we as people will interact much better with each other. Then there is much more to connect and creates the we feeling. That is why you actually have to create with all buildings, but also with neighborhoods, cities, countries. And if you use that as a starting point, then we will automatically get a new society. But you have to start with the basics, the foundation. We have lost that. And then food is added, and exercise, education, healthcare are added, or hospitals.
En daar komt natuurlijk ook voeding bij. Daar komt ook beweging bij. Onderwijs. Gezondheidszorg. Onze ziekenhuizen.
Do you know
that
infant food is heated up in a microwave?
Waarom?
That's
De
awful.
kindervoeding wordt opgewarmd in een magnetron. Dat is toch crimineel?
Ja. Potje. 3 minuutjes.
Is wat je thuis gaat doen? Je magnetron de deur uit.
Ik heb hem niet.
So you are an architect, you design buildings, but they are in a location that you first have to vitalize, and all colors, materials, PVC floors. A friend of mine is in the wood floor business. I always hear this kind of things. In retirement homes, they use PVC floors. Those poor people are getting really heavy. Their energy is drained, while they still have a nice long life ahead of them. So we must learn to create a vital environment, and the industry must also learn to listen to that, to think differently. But now I think coming to an important part, the industry is of course still very much focused on making a profit. This new industry will arise automatically. The change that must come, it comes from ourselves. The consumer decides. See how a car brand is doing.
En die komt vanuit onszelf.
Ja, zeer zeker.
They ask top sport models so that the image is created to sell its regular model. So in our society, people, the celebrities, who then also have the income to create a vital environment, will spread the word through influencers. But we also have to tell it at schools, and then the child can tell it at home. We have to be very firmly in that. Connect, stay open, and receive, and be constant in your communication. I think it's really connecting, especially connecting. If you're going to rip off, you won't win anything. If someone is still completely in the old thinking,
En ik denk ook echt verbinden, mannen.
Vooral verbinden. Kijk, als je gaat afzetten.
Then I also say to that person with great love, I'm not the right person for you to design your building. Then someone else will come naturally. But in the past, I would have said, but then I will go into battle, and then I will create something that is not in harmony with me. We really have to feel what is right for us, but also if you want to make friends. If it doesn't resonate too bad, we'll remain good friends. But no, we have of course learned that in recent years, and you can see that when I look at myself, the transition from friends is amazingly. So for every person who leaves, 5 people come back. And that's also what we do in a micro-society. The buildings are just created in harmony with nature, flowing shapes, lots of green, lots of natural materials, no plastics, and everything in a flow that people, when they get there, you know, because your system tells you, and that's why you feel comfortable there.
je weet het wel, want je systeem...
We have to wrap up now because we have to go to Briony again. But of course, we will see you later. We're going to record a whole show with you, Aniel. Come back again. Insane. Really, it gives me goosebumps. I get so inspired by people like you who just, wow. We need that so much. And I think it's so nice that you're telling people this now, because it is so important that those people at home also feel and see this from its happening. Thank you. What an incredible, inspiring conversation. Inspiring people.
It's happening.
It's really crazy what's going on, Briony. Wow, crazy.
Jongens, wat een
This is just
inspirerende gesprek, inspirerende mensen.
Real Univibes.
Wat er gaan is, Briony.
Heerlijk, hè?
Ja, wauw, wat een vibe. Kijk, met een big smile.
Vibing.
Echt, ja.
It's real Univibes.
Do you also see Suriname as a first startup, the blueprint? Yes, those were really the first vibes. I could feel that great there. Sometimes I thought it was so nice to see the group, and I could already feel what it will be like there when we really have built everything there. You feel that people are so connected, supporting each other, helping each other, but also interacting with each other very consciously. Everyone was also very consciously looking at themselves and also very consciously co-creating. We have, of course, done a lot of quantum dream journeys about what the society will look like. I could feel it's real in the energy. The blueprint is set out there. What was also funny is that while we were in Suriname, I got a lot of extra new investment conversations. So you feel when you create such a retreat together for a group course and bring people together there physically, online can also help, but also physically bringing people together, then something shifts in the field and things start to speed up. And it really feels like a wave. I've been working on that process for some time now, and I know that when people step into this process, sometimes they feel like it's not going fast enough. It hasn't been built yet, and I can't live there yet, but it's a huge field. We're part of a much larger field, of a much larger process, and that has its own rhythm. Of course, we as humans have ideas of, yes, next year I still want to be able to live there. My child has to go to the new school. It will then be 6 years old. However, we are a collective field of energy, of people who need the rhythm of the transformation process. We have to trust that. It's about energy. And we all have concrete ideas of what we want, but it's a movement. Something you cannot force. That goes against our human nature. We want to impose our will on nature. Then things go wrong, and then you feel that you have to co-create with that energy during the flow. That's no longer forcing. But then it is just following the flow that is already there. That is a very important thing, Roy, to pass this along to the people who indeed feel this way, but who sometimes indeed still feel those frustrations. When is it coming? When are we going to start? A kind of confidence in the rhythm of this process, why I think is a very nice analog. If you look at a very complex Swiss watch, that functions completely attuned to each other. But our frustration, our emotions, our powerlessness, that is the sand, the dust that actually works against the cogs of the quantum fields. My wife says it very beautifully. You have to have unshakable faith. Unshakable faith. If there's any doubt, that's the sand. Then you should step back in the confidence that you are not forcing it. Then I say in quantum terms, it's already there. We just have to tune in to what is already there. And then it flows. The moment you start pushing again, it blocks. We must already stand in that field that is already there, because then it will arise. Yes, that is also what I try to do with Univibes, of course, indeed, to indicate that our consciousness creates our reality in this way. That's why I think it's important that new media comes along, because if we can bring those things forward, raise awareness, then we can start creating together. Fantastic people. What a great conversation. I can also imagine that there are a lot of questions at play right now. What about healthcare? Is it also for me? I'm interested. How are you doing financially with the locals? We may not have time for that now. Maybe we can call at a later time. I want to dive into that further because I find it very interesting to keep following this closely. For now, could people go somewhere too? So as we already said, the moment you actually take action, even if it is just informing or taking initiatives, that actually already gives an acceleration in the field. It's like feeding the wave. It gives an extra push. So we plan some moments, sessions where people can get more information. And you can also find more interviews on societesforthefuture.org/blog and also educateyourfuture.com/thefuture and then EN. There you can register for the information sessions and you can also find more information about everything that goes along with it. We'll also put the link in the description. So thank you so much, Roy. Thank you. We are also launching soon new events. I'm totally ready for it. My fingers are itching because it's so unique what we're creating. We give you an experience. It's not theory. It's diving in it. We're going to get into the shit and we're going to find the nuggets in it. And that's what we're here for. We're going for the gold nuggets. So if you are interested, go to our website, univibes.nl/events. I want to thank you so much for this amazing conversation, also to Aniel and Stacey, and I thought it was magical and inspiring. I thank you so much, and I wish you lots of luck.
Gaan doen, hou ons op de hoogte en als we bij kunnen dragen met Univibes, dan doen we dat natuurlijk graag met alle liefde, want volgens mij zijn het...
Yes, and thank you so much for watching and listening to this interview, and I hope you found it as inspiring as I did. And do you think it's great what we do? Go to our website and support our foundation, because really we can keep going only with your help. That's just how it is. We still need money to keep feeding everyone and to continue building, because we also have a lot of great plans and other ideas. Just take a look. For now, a big kiss and thank you so much.
Een dikke kus en bedankt. Tot volgende week.
This interview is part of the Societies for the Future Network project, where we imagine and co-create together the Societies for the Future. Share this interview with your friends and connect with like-minded pioneers and experts on the worldwide platform societiesforthefuture.org.